Praise be to God, the Father, our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and onto an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade, like a basketball jersey, kept in heaven for you, who, through faith, are shielded by God's power until the coming of salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time.
So as you were processing starting FCA, this opportunity had come about. This wasn't your first experience with FCA. Like, you didn't go in blind. You
Right.
kind of already knew what FCA was about because you were a student athlete with FCA. Is that right?
Yeah. So 2004 was my first experience with FCA. So that was the summer entering my senior year of high school. At that time, I was, I guess, your typical high school student. I was seeking affirmation. I was seeking my identity in so many different things that the world had to offer me. We went to church as a family, but I didn't grasp who Jesus was, what he did for me. So that was kind of who I was. I was seeking popularity. I found my identity in sports. I found my identity in my performance. So if I had a great game, I was on cloud nine. And typically around that time, I started really excelling in lacrosse. So my confidence was going with my performance. And my head was also doing the same.
Also expanding?
Big time. And I think God used lacrosse to humble me in college. I went to play at a small Division I school. And so God used the sport that led me to him in 2004 to also humble me later in life. So just a lot of cool things working. But rewind back to 2004, entering my senior year of high school. That's the prime time to get recruited to play lacrosse, at least back then. So I was trying out for a bunch of different club teams that would allow me to play in front of coaches. And my mom signed me up for the Christian team, the FCA team. And it was the first FCA team they put together to compete in different tournaments.
Wow.
To play in front of coaches. So I went to Calvert Hall, tried out for the team with kids all across the country, really. And miraculously, I had a phenomenal tryout and I ended up making the team.
Wow.
And so I spent about 10 days to 2 weeks with the team. It wasn't a full summer. It was just a really dense time and we stayed together. So it's a lot different than club now, but we stayed together for those 10 days, traveling to different tournaments and things all throughout kind of the Mid-Atlantic region.
Wow.
And it was through coaches and volunteers and athletes on that team that spoke my language, where I heard the gospel for the first time.
Yeah.
That it was real to me. We did Bible studies, we did worship. We prayed before and after games, and this environment was like totally new to me.
Yeah.
I played lacrosse and I was a lacrosse player, but never did I know you could marry the two together. And God used what I found my identity in to give me a new identity in him, in Jesus Christ. So that was 2004, entering my senior year of high school. And so that's my beginning of my FCA story. Yeah.
And so your life has obviously changed because of being affiliated with FCA, and not because of the organization necessarily, but because of the people who kept you accountable, the relationships that you built. And we could probably talk about all the different ways that FCA has changed your life, not only from your relationship with God, but to your vocation and your calling and, you know, where your career is now.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, as God has changed your life through FCA, I'm sure in the last 10 years, you've heard stories of kind of change throughout. So could you talk a little bit about maybe FCA's reach, like how, I mean, are we talking just Mid-Atlantic? Are we talking, you know, nationwide? Are we talking worldwide? And is there a story about how God has been using FCA that stands out to you?
Yeah, so so I was called to ministry as an area rep here in Carroll County 9 years ago-ish, 10 years ago. And so I've seen God do crazy things in Carroll County, where we now have, 5 staff in Carroll County and 12 total staff in Central Maryland, which is Frederick, Carroll, and Howard. So there's been some awesome God stories that we could talk for a long time about. But I appreciate you asking a broader question. I guess it doesn't get talked about a ton, but it should be. So just the international piece of FCA. So each region within the United States is partnering with a super region in the world.
Wow.
So the Mid-Atlantic region is partnering with Southeast Asia. And this is countries like Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, and that whole southern part of Southeast Asia. So one really cool thing that we're doing, and that's just the Mid-Atlantic. So every other region within the United States has partners worldwide. So we are working with the staff and partners in those regions. Ashley and I, 3 or 4 years ago, got to go to Thailand and Singapore, and we did a Southeast Asia staff, all staff like retreat training with the people over there. So some of us from the Mid-Atlantic went over there, and we did training on camps, on boards, on fundraising, on everything that we do over here, now that we've got this international focus. And we got to meet and, develop relationships with our partners in that sector of the world. And some of these places are some of the most unreached places in the world in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And some of these places, Indonesia, I believe, has one of the highest, if not the highest, Muslim population in the world. And we have a staff there. So for him to raise money, to do ministry, to spread the gospel, looks a little bit different than Carroll County.
Yeah.
So to hear stories like that, and to connect with staff relationally, to be able to keep up with them on WhatsApp and just through connection is like makes the world a lot smaller.
Yeah.
And you asked like one story. So we have a staff, Peter, in one of the closed countries over in Southeast Asia. I won't mention the country. He is a disciple maker to the max. So if there's anybody that resembles Jesus or Peter in the Bible or Paul in the Bible, it's Peter over in Southeast Asia. At one time, he had 35 people living with him in his house, 35 of his disciples living with him in his house. And remember, the government does not like Christianity and the movement and proselytizing and sharing your faith. So Peter's been to jail 7 times for sharing his faith. His house was burnt down by the government for sharing his faith. We have helped, FCA has helped him get back on his feet. And so now he has 3 houses with 15 people in each house. While he's in jail, so the jail system works differently over there. His wife would send him food, and under the rice that she would send, she would tear out Bible pages and send it with the food, so he could get the Bible into the prison. And just to sit down knee to knee with a guy like this and hear a story is just like incredibly convicting. That he is willing to go to jail and go to jail and go to jail and continue to share the gospel and disciple people and just be obedient to what Christ has called him to. In that situation, just is convicting and also it's really like it just kind of pushes me forward. Like, man, I need to be bold. I need to share the gospel.
I've never been to jail.
and I won't.
Yeah.
In today's, in America, in today's world, like you and I can record right now.
Right. Yeah.
And talk about Jesus however much we want to.
Yeah, for sure. So we, kind of have that a global perspective of where FCA is in the world. Kind of getting back closer to home a little bit. You work with student athletes all the time, both high school, college level. And I think it could be tempting to say, well, okay, like you're the leader, you're the one who does all the teaching and all the guiding and all the mentoring, but there's this kind of like give and take relationship, right? Like you're giving encouragement and guidance, but you're also like receiving from those relationships as well. So when working with students, have there been things that students themselves, like, have they taught you about God or faith?
Yeah. So God has brought an awesome staff to Carroll County. So we've got 2 other full-time staff, a part-time staff, and an admin. So I have been the sole provider in years past, but we've got a phenomenal staff that is really helping us disciple and get deeper on many campuses. Some of my favorite times are getting my hands dirty, boots on the ground. I've been the character coach for the football team at Westminster and lacrosse team at Westminster since I've been on staff. I've helped, West Middle Huddle, Westminster Huddle, been around the McDaniel Huddle. I've learned a lot. I learned that being around youth athletes from the middle school to the college level, like being authentic and letting your hair down is like the biggest thing. Like the most fruitful relationships and conversations happen when I can be myself and share about who I was when I was at Westminster High School, the athlete I was at Robert Morris and what I experienced there, and how Ashley and Macy are doing. And when athletes and coaches and people know these things, that's what I've learned the most is like, gosh, don't be afraid to let your hair down. You know what I mean? And be yourself and to have fun. I've learned things through the years of like, man, we've got youth and people in this county and these communities that like are eager to lead in their faith. Like there's hope there too. I mean, we've got kids from the middle school to high school to college ranks that step up every year to lead FCA on their campuses. It's a student-led, student-initiated club on public school campuses, and every year we've got kids that are like, I want to lead. Like,
wow, yeah.
Like, let's lead this thing. Let's do this. And so I'm there to be more support, you know what I mean? Because it's not me that's leading the FCA. We've had kids lead team huddles on their teams where they're gathering, a group of their teammates after practice and opening a devotion. They're sitting around in a small group or a huddle in FCA's terminology, and they're doing a devotion in their practice gear in a circle on the practice field or in the locker room. So the eagerness, the want to, the desire to share their faith in the context of sports is like, it's the common language. It's the brotherhood or the sisterhood that you link arms with your teammate and you do life with them. And one of those things is like, hey, let's take a look what the Bible says. And how we can relate that to sport and life. Yeah.
With what you've seen in FCA and anybody watching, like it is not uncommon at all, and I think it's pretty cool, but it's not uncommon to, turn on a football game and then you see everybody huddled up at the end of a football game for prayer, both sides coming together. You see that in high school sports, college sports, professional, football, baseball, kind of everything. And there does seem to be this connection between sports and faith, or discipleship and faith. Even when you look through the Bible, I mean, Paul references sports all the time. So what is it about discipleship and following Jesus and sports that kind of goes hand in hand or plays well together?
So my life verse has been 1 Corinthians 9:24 through 27. Don't you know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets a prize? Run in such a way to get that prize. And it continues on and says, we don't compete for an earthly crown, we compete for a heavenly crown. So I train my body, not like a boxer beating the air, but I discipline my body so that after I preach to others, I won't be disqualified. And so that's my life verse. That's my verse also for this year, is to sports and discipleship equals discipline, equals staying after it, a pursuit. Paul talks about running a race, run it to win. And I think that has a lot to do with discipleship, because sometimes our discipleship journey doesn't look like we're running to win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's seasons in my life where my discipleship or my sanctification process might be, I might be halfway in the pack or last in the pack. And Paul encourages us, man, seek after Jesus with all your heart. You know, run after him, sprint after him. He's our only hope.
Yeah.
Train your body, discipline yourself within the context, not of sports, but like sports, but also in our training of the scriptures. And so we talk about that a lot when I talk with the lacrosse team and football team. I try to tie in sports-related messages to scriptures like that one, and also the gospel. So there's a lot of tie-in. So my life verse would be one, and there's if you don't mind, I have an FCA we did with the football team at Westminster. I wanted to walk through what we would talk about. Yeah. So like take you into FCA with the Westminster football team.
That'd be awesome.
What do we talk about? So, so this one I dive into a little bit of a gospel message, and it's about Kemba Walker. So I don't know if you remember who Kemba Walker is, but he played basketball for UConn in 2008 to 2011. He was a first-team All-American. He was a stud. Cover of Sports Illustrated magazine, and he left college early for the NBA. So he got drafted by the worst team in the NBA. He gets drafted in 2011 by the Charlotte Bobcats, later to be renamed the Hornets. They're the NBA's worst team in history. In 2011, they went 7-59. They had the worst offense and the worst defense in the league. They changed their name to the Hornets, and at that time they had never won a playoff series, and they hadn't had a Hall of Famer go through their organization. So Kemba Walker, stud on a terrible team.
Yeah.
Kemba Walker gets traded to the Boston Celtics. So Kemba Walker goes from a Bobcat jersey, Bobcat jersey, Hornet jersey, to a Celtics jersey. So if you know anything about the Celtics, they're the most storied team in all of NBA franchise. They've got banners for days in their gym. He went from, NBA's worst team to the first team in a matter of a trade, like real quick. Everything changed when he put on that jersey. They have more players in the Hall of Fame than any other team. They have more championships than any other team. In a matter of a moment, a matter of a trade, Kemba Walker changed his jersey, went from the worst team to the best team. So what does that look like in terms of our faith? So how do we tie this into our faith? And this is kind of where I would chat a little bit about Jesus with the football team. We have the opportunity to put on a new jersey in our life. It's not a matter of sports, things that can come and go and perish, and Kemba Walker will someday not play basketball anymore. He's 30 years old right now, and basketball will come and go in his life. But in 1 Peter 1, 3-5, we have an opportunity to put on a new jersey. It says, "Praise be to God, the Father, our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and onto an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade, like a basketball jersey, kept in heaven for you, who, through faith, are shielded by God's power until the coming of salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time." So we have basically three verses of the gospel, putting on a new birth, a new jersey, and we'll talk about, what is mercy? It says, God, in his great mercy, he has given us new birth. Mercy is compassion and forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish. So we deserve.
You deserve to be on the Hornets.
Yeah, we deserve it. We're sinful. We're terrible. Everything in us, is blemished. It's sinful. We deserve to be on the Hornets. But we were traded. Not by what we've done, but in His great mercy. By His grace, we are saved. And we'll talk about, what is new birth into a living hope? What does that look like? And we'll have discussions around that. And why is this promising? And I'm looking for things like because it can never perish, spoil, or fade. And so you asked what can we learn from faith and
what's
sports,
the connection
discipleship,
there?
sports? Well, that's what we discuss with kids on teams in our community.
Wow.
And that's the beauty, and that's why, gosh, if you cut me, I'd bleed FCA. That is why, I bleed sports, I bleed Jesus. There's no greater combination in my mind.
Yeah, I feel like we just had a little Bible study. That was awesome. This was good for me. This was just healing time for me. But I love that the story that you used, and again, taking the language of sports that we know and then using that to reveal truth in Scripture, and that being the calling and the skill of those working for FCA, to help people take a language they already know and introduce them to another language, a language of the soul. Yeah. I think that's really amazing.
To our community.
Yeah.
To kids and people that now don't walk into church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To kids on football teams or teams in general that might never just, they might hear the name of Jesus, but they don't know who He is.
Yeah.
And if we can put it and wrap it in a way that's digestible and understanding and easy to comprehend, that's the way I feel like we can take the gospel into our communities and have a humongous difference through sports. Yeah.
You said students will come to FCA who might not come to church, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a partnership between FCA and churches. And so what is it that FCA can do that churches can't? What is it that churches can do that FCA can't? And what makes that partnership so important?
That's such a good question. FCA's mission statement is to lead every coach and athlete into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ and His church. So we believe as FCA the incredible importance, and I think it lines up with LifePoint 100%, is to find and follow. Jesus is LifePoint's mission, and our mission is to lead every coach and athlete into a growing relationship. So to lead, to find, and a growing relationship to follow. FCA is not the church. We are a parachurch. We are a foot in the door ministry. We have opportunities in our community. We have relationships in our community. Our strategy is to and through the coach. We've got relationships with some of the most influential people in the community.
Yeah.
The coach. What does coach say? Coach says show up at Saturday at 6 a.m. for practice. Where's the 13-year-old or 14 or 15? They're up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. to get to practice by 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Who else in this community can really do that without instituting it in law or something where you have to show up for school at 7:30 because if not, you'll get detention. So FCA is positioned really well in our community with relationships in our community and trust, I feel like, in our community. People trust FCA. We've been here for a while. The ministry's been around since 1954. So FCA brings a lot to the table, just kind of like casting seeds into our community. Second side of that question, what can the church do that FCA can't? Is be the church. I mean, provide teaching, provide discipleship. Granted, we're moving towards discipleship, but we are not the church when it comes to these things. They can provide a home for families. They can provide community that FCA can't. I mean, we can provide community within the context of sports and what we do, but like in the context of like a faith-based community, like the church is it. So that's why we have it in our mission statement. We want to lead every coach and athlete into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ and his church, whether it's LifePoint. We've had coaches and athletes and leaders from McDaniel go to Crossroads, Westminster Baptist, Uniontown Bible, and many other churches in our community. The partnership is a beautiful one, and we can continue to push that forward and seek that. But to your question, like FCA is positioned really well, and the church is the church.
Yeah.
And so we want to bring that together and serve together and bring people to church and bring the church out to the fields at the same time.
Yeah. From a like a day-to-day, perspective as well. It is hard for like churches, not impossible, but it is hard for a church to, whether because of resources or just overall ability to be able to get into a school to meet students where they're at. And even like working in a student ministry, like there are different challenges where you work with an organization that's well known, and this is what you do. You go into schools, you help coaches, you often are coaches yourselves, and you're in the schools where, again, because of resources or timing or whatever, churches just aren't able to go into a school and meet students where they are on a consistent basis, and meet them in a shared interest. And I think that to me is, as a church, why it's so important for us to partner with FCA and other organizations like yours, because the access that you have and what you do, we are aligned in our purpose and our mission. If the Great Commission is to go out and make disciples of all nations, FCA is like, okay, we got the coaches and the athletes, and so it's not only special, but I think important for the church to come alongside and say, hey, we're in the all nations thing. Coaches and athletes fall under that. Let's come alongside of you and help in any way, any way that we can. And so, as we wrap up, kind of the last question before we wrap up is in that kind of partnership realm. But I have kind of two questions. One, if somebody's watching tonight, or they're watching, listening to the podcast, and they say, I think this is something my student would be really interested in. How does somebody get connected to FCA at their school?
I would say the first place to go would be to go to our website first, and connect with us, and we'll guide you to. I could answer you via email or a phone call. Or if you're trying to get involved with FCA on your school within the context of like the FCA club on campus, you could talk to somebody even at the school. And they could point you to the coach or the teacher and the student leaders that help lead that. If you have a student or somebody that would like to lead FCA on their team outside of the club, or even a volunteer that would want to be a character coach to get plugged into a team and be on the sidelines and invest in a team specifically, we could train that person up and give them some resources and show them, how to be a character coach or how to be a student leader within the context of their team.
That's cool. On the website, they can find whether or not there's already a club there on campus or not. And awesome. And then you had talked about, being a character coach, coming alongside and helping out with students. And so the next question is kind of in that realm of, if somebody wanted to volunteer, or maybe they want to partner with you financially, which is a big aspect. You got a really great staff and you want to keep growing. So if somebody wanted to partner with you as a volunteer, or somebody wants to partner with you financially, is the website also the best place to connect with you?
Yep.
Okay.
There's an invest tab at the top, and then it's got all of our staff and other ways to donate. We've got interns in the summer. We have a camp scholarship fund. There's many ways to donate to support the growth of the ministry. And then if you want to volunteer, whether, like I said, character coach, board member, help with events, there's many different avenues to volunteer. That's right there on the website as well. So it's kind of your catch-all if you want to learn more about FCA. It's carrollcountyfca.org.
carrollcountyfca.org. Okay. We'll also put that in the description on YouTube. So if anybody was like, what did they say? Or they just want to click the link, it'll be in our description. But on a personal note, I love what FCA is doing. I've been fortunate enough to be your partner, since you started, and it's been a real honor. I've gotten to come to a couple of huddles, which has been really great. And I can personally attest to FCA in Carroll County, just the impact that's been made. We've got students here at LifePoint that are a part of FCA, and I love what you guys are doing, you and your whole staff. And I really appreciate you coming on Midweek and talking about it, but I also appreciate what you guys are doing. If there was one thing that those of us watching that we could be praying for you and your staff and your students for, what would that thing be?
First off, thank you for your ongoing support. You've been a brother to me for many years. And I also want to say LifePoint Church has been so pivotal in my journey that God has led me on. I met Jimmy Page through the mission trip in Haiti, through LifePoint Church. I was working in the corporate world for 2.5 years, and I didn't give FCA 1 second of thought to professionally to work for it. And it was God took me abroad to go to Haiti to do a phenomenal mission trip, to also understand my calling back here in America was through sports ministry. So I met Jimmy, who was on staff with FCA. He was here, and he's moved to Colorado and still working for FCA. And then LifePoint has been like an anchor to the ministry here in many ways. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you. And just like there's not enough words to just thank LifePoint as well, this family here. So how can you be praying for Carroll County FCA, Central Maryland FCA? I think still we're in this flux of like coming out of COVID, like coming out of like being online, but we've been out of touch, like real relationships for a while, and I'm sure the church is feeling this too. We're getting back into relationships, but we're getting back into relationships.
Yeah. So
this past year and a half, we've been online, we've been like outside socially, you know how it is. And we're starting to plan for camps again this summer, and we're starting to get back into like some ministry that's very healthy. But the transition still of getting relationships back to where they were is a struggle. So on all levels, I would say pray for our staff as we continue to navigate the shifting of tides and everything that we're doing, and pray for the Westminster High School community as we lost Bird Brown, the soccer coach. He's 58 years old, heart attack last Monday, passed away. He went to high school at Westminster. He's coached there forever, teacher there, kind of a papa bear to many, many athletes and people in this entire community. So I think that would be front and center of a prayer request. Big time.
We're definitely praying for Westminster High, and I know that there are a lot of people here at LifePoint and in our community that have been walking through this, and I'm thankful for FCA and the community that you've built around not only the athletes but the coaches and teachers at Westminster and in our community all around who have been touched by Bird's life, and And so that's really amazing. And we'll continue to pray for FCA, your ministry, and again for our family over at Westminster High. Well, I want to say a big thank you to Brandon Johnson for joining us this week on Midweek. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If we talked about anything and maybe you have a question, I would love to hear your questions. Please feel free to comment on our YouTube channel. We'll be sure to answer any questions that you have about our conversation or about FCA. We'll also have the FCA website that Brandon mentioned. We'll have that in the description as well. If you want to find out more information about Fellowship of Christian Athletes, please visit their website. Thank you again for joining another episode of LifePoint Midweek. Please be sure to like and share this video. We'd love to get it out to as many people as possible. And if you like what you saw here, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much. See you back here next week.